Hello and welcome back to Crafted by Corie. If you're new, I'm Corie. Welcome to my channel. If you are returning, thank you as always for being here. I have some brand new DIYs, so let's go ahead and get right on into the crafting. DIY number one. All right, I have some Easter eggs. If you've been following me for a while, you know I've been doing a lot of projects with these. But this time I am looking just for the bottoms, the bottom halves of these eggs. So the ones that are a little more rounded. I'm just gonna cut off those little nubbies that were holding the top to it. And I'm using my Adirondack white chalk paint. I'm gonna give each of them a couple of coats of paint. And then I'm grabbing out, this is my oatmeal chalk paint, and I wanted like a light caramel color chalk paint for the next coat, but I didn't have anything that shade. So I'm trying to kind of concoct it here. And I started adding some of my vintage Victorian pink chalk paint. I went ahead and grabbed one of my little popsicle sticks from the Dollar Tree, and I'm gonna mix that all together. It didn't quite get me where I wanted. I don't know what I was thinking with the yellow. Clearly my oatmeal is a little bit more on the green tone, and adding yellow to this is not going to get it to, to where I need it. Yeah, so anyway, I mixed in some of that yellow, realized my error, and then I was trying to figure out, do I add brown? Do I add red? But then I saw in my stash this salmon color, and I was like, oh, I ended up putting about twice as much in there as I had intended. But you know what? It was a happy accident because I clearly needed more. I actually end up adding more of that color here. It was starting to get me to where I wanted to be with the color, and I ended up with a color that I was very, very happy with. As you can see, I'm still adding in more of the salmon color. So if you have the oatmeal and this salmon color, you can mix those two together and it's going to get you to where you want to be if you're looking for this shade. It actually ended up looking almost like a skin tone to me. So I'm going to be keeping that in my stash, and I am sure that I will have uses for it in the future. I'm just using a little makeup brush and dabbing it on all over all three of those eggs. And now also from the Dollar Tree, I have one of these little cutting boards. It's a little bamboo cutting board, and I'm using my white chalk paint marker from Arteza, and you could see I was kind of air writing there. I'm very visual, and so I have to kind of get an idea of what something is going to look like before I commit to it. So that's what I was doing there. And you can use a stencil for this. You do not have to hand letter it, right? You could use a stencil, you could trace words onto it and then go over it. You could use, if you have a vinyl cutter, you could use that. I opted to just do it by hand. So I went over it once and then I went back over it again and made it all a little bit darker. I did end up having to press the point of my marker onto my little scrap parchment paper there to just get it flowing a little bit better. But I just wanted to make sure that my color was nice and dark and opaque. And then once I had all of that, the right thickness, I went back and added some dots here to all of the little places on the letters. I'm sure you've seen fonts done like this before. And so I just went through and added all of that in just to give my letters a little bit more interest. It also, if you're feeling like your letters are not perfect, this helps to kind of camouflage some of the, I'm not even going to call them mistakes, some of the things that you're not pleased with, you know, it kind of helps to camouflage that, and it just makes it a little bit more fun and whimsical. And that was what I was going for with this particular piece. So once I had that all done, I'm gonna grab my little bunny butt, well, my little half eggs. Now you know that they're gonna be bunny butts. I've got my little half eggshells, and I'm gonna drop some hot glue in around the inside surface here, and then I'm gonna drop it down on my sign, and I'm going to tap it so that the hot glue drips down onto the sign to secure it without oozing everywhere. So I did that with all three of those. Here I had a couple of different sizes of pom-poms. I picked the larger of the two. These are also from the Dollar Tree. And I'm just gonna secure the little pom-poms onto the bunny butts to make their little tails. And then I'm gonna go into my stash and grab some felt. So this is self-adhesive felt. Little did I know that my white adhesive had all dried up here. So you're gonna see in a minute, I end up having to use hot glue. And it ended up being just fine in the end. But right now I was kind of trying to figure out what shape I wanted. Ultimately, I just didn't even bother using my pencil markings, and I just kind of winged it. So you can see here I'm making little paws, and you also could see that I was applying some hot glue to the tip there. So I was pulling off the backing, it's not sticking anymore. So I just went ahead and used a little teeny bit of hot glue, which is perfectly fine. So it goes to show you don't have to have self-adhesive felt to do this either. You can certainly use hot glue with regular felt. My pink felt was still working adhesive wise, and so I was making the little pads for the paws. Now these were pretty small, so I was having, excuse me, I didn't mean to yawn. So I was having to work as best I could. I probably should have tried to see if I had a smaller pair of scissors that would work for this. But I made it happen. I would have ideally liked to have had 4 little toes on each little bunny paw, but I ended up doing just 3 because the ones that I were making, it was tiny work, and the way that I had cut the little circles, they were a little bit on the large side. So, but I think it worked out fine. Let me know what you think of this little project. DIY number 2. All right, for this project, I have I threw my little beads everywhere, didn't I? But those are 16 millimeter wood beads, and then I have my glass vase. This is something I've had in my stash for a while. I think it had a floral arrangement in it at one point. I don't think I got it from the Dollar Tree, although I might have. I'm not sure. I've had it for quite some time. But I am just using some hot glue on my beads and pressing them up against the base with the hole facing straight up. With this bead, I tried to do the glue on 2 sides. It just didn't really work, because I wanted to glue it to the other bead also, as well as the vase. Yeah, I finally decided I was going to apply the glue right to the glass. So here you can see I'm just doing a strip, and then I'll just slide the beads right up along it. I'm sorry that it's hard to see from the angle that I'm at, but hopefully you can kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about. And it allowed me to work more quickly this way. You don't want to go too far around the glass because your hot glue will cool rather quickly with the glass surface. So just be mindful of that. Now, as I got around to the end, I realized that my beads were not going to fit all the way around. So I ended up grabbing some 14 millimeter beads that I had as well. So I remember working with 16 millimeter beads, and now I have a couple of 14 millimeter beads that I'm mixing in just to ensure that I have a tight fit all the way around. And they are close enough in size that it's not super noticeable that I was using a different size bead. So once I had that all set, I am going to go kind of every other bead, and I'm going to build it up with the holes lining up exactly, or as close to exact as I can get. So again, applying just a little dot of hot glue to the glass and applying my bead. And then every other one of those, I added a 3rd bead. So it kind of had a variation of 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, kind of going around. Now, it doesn't have to be symmetrical. Is that the right word for this? It doesn't have to be like such a pattern. You can do it however you want. And then I was grabbing my little flower picks. And I do want to thank my sweet friend, Rebecca. She is a really good friend of mine, has been for a long time. Gosh, years and years and years. I don't even want to say how many, but she had seen something like this online and shared it with me as a project idea. So thank you to Rebecca for the idea. But I'm just pulling apart my little picks and I am sliding them down into the holes from the beads, right? So I was finding that these particular pieces were kind of flopping over, so I ended up adding a little bit of glue in to the beads, and you're going to see at a better angle here in just a second to see what I'm talking about. But I literally took the hot glue and added it to the hole, just a little dot. You don't need a whole lot of it because then you put the little pick in and it takes the glue down in with it, and that allowed me to get them to set up the way that I wanted them to stand. And I just did that all the way around with the taller sections of beads. And once I had that done, I went into my stash and grabbed a little electronic votive, and that was it. DIY number 3. For this project, I have some scrapbook paper as well as some foam core board. I was going to say cardstock. This is not cardstock. This is foam core board. And I am going to try to draw out an egg shape. So I totally could just go with that, but I was being a little particular. And I decided I really wanted to have a pattern that was going to be symmetrical. So I grabbed my piece of parchment paper, I have it folded in half, clearly, and I'm drawing half of an egg shape. And I just kind of checked to see if it was about the same size, and it was, as what I had originally drawn out. And so I did a second one, and I'll check that one again. Yes, about the same size. And then I folded it in half, and I traced on the other side, right? So I've got a full egg now. Does that make sense? So when I open this up, you're going to see I've got a full egg and something that I can work with here, right? So now I just need to get this transferred over. So what I did was I flipped over my paper and I figured I would just rub it. Probably would have worked better if I had gone over it a little bit more, but it was sufficient for me to be able to see it. So I know it's hard probably for you to see the line, but I am able to see it there on my work surface. So I just went ahead and traced over it a little bit better so that when I went to cut it out, I worked with the correct line. I did that for both of them. Then I grabbed out my self-healing mat and my X-Acto knife. I'm just cutting off that excess for right now. Well, actually, I was going to try and cut through both layers because I need the same egg shape for ×2 for each of these, right? I want 2 of these, and they need to be the same. But it was kind of slipping and sliding on me. So ultimately I decided I really needed to do them one at a time. And once I had one done, I traced it and then did the other one. So once I had them all cut out, I'm looking for the center of the egg approximately, and I've got them stacked. I've got both of the I'm not making any sense. So there are actually 2 layers of foam core board here, and you'll see in just a second. And I wanted to find the center because I'm going to be cutting a slit on one from center to the bottom, and on the same size, but the other piece, I'm going to be doing it from the center to the top. So you'll see in just a second what I'm talking about and why. Now, this was something that I saw at Walmart while I was walking through and I was checking out their seasonal stuff, and I thought, oh my goodness, I could totally make something like this, and I thought it was super cute. So that was where I got this idea. And so you can see I've got that second layer there, and I'm just kind of trying to figure out the best way to make sure that these are going to line up. So you can see maybe just barely the little hole that I've got lined up there. I was thinking having this the way that I do, that I was going to help keep everything like straight and lined up. Goodness. But so you can see all the lines and the way I've got them done. And now I'm just going to cut those out with my X-Acto knife as well, so that once that's done, I can piece them together and have a three-dimensional little egg that's going to stand up on my table. Isn't that cute? So fun. So I'll pull that apart, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut out the others. Once everything is cut, I'm taking my scrapbook paper. I was trying to figure out how to do this. At first I was thinking I was going to do one egg with one scrapbook paper and the other egg with the other, but it was just, the paper wasn't large enough. So I ended up having to get a little creative. And I thought that actually ended up being a happy accident as well, because it made my eggs more interesting to have two different patterns going on each egg. And so I did go back to my stash and grab out a couple of other pieces of scrapbook paper that were complementary to each other, but also different. So I'm just kind of using school glue and just kind of smooshing that around to help spread the paint, my goodness, spread the glue out to cover all the surfaces. Now, I will say that I probably should have just painted on some Mod Podge, and that might have actually had the same issue, but it did kind of, I want to say buckle, that's not the right word, wrinkle. You can see that bottom right egg. It's kind of, and these are dry now at this point, it's kind of like waffly. You know what I'm talking about. But that was the one thing that kind of bugged me a little bit. I mean, it doesn't need to be perfect, and I'm sure that it gives it a little bit more interest. And once it was completely done, it was a lot less noticeable, but I don't know. I'm always very critical of my own work. So trimming up the edges on the scrapbook paper, I did find, and you probably saw me using my scissors to trim that off. I don't know if my blade just wasn't sharp enough, if maybe I needed to switch out my blade, but I was finding that it was kind of tearing the paper in some places as I tried to get close to the edge of the foam core board. So ultimately, I personally found it easier just to use my scissors to trim up those edges and get as close as I could to the foam core board. So once I had that done, I got it all pieced back together. Just made sure that everything was lined up. I did the same thing with the other two pieces and got them lined up. I think these are so cute. And then I grabbed out some of this, I'm going to call it burlap ribbon. I mean, clearly it's not just plain burlap, but it's kind of that idea, but it's got a pattern to it, clearly. These are from the Dollar Tree, and I want to apologize. I did not realize that I was not in frame as I was doing this. Hopefully you're getting a good idea of what I'm doing, but essentially I'm just running a bead of hot glue along the edge of the foam core board and applying the ribbon. I'm just making sure that my little edges are as hidden as possible and making sure that I'm covering that whole edge to make it nice and neat and clean. And I think that this ribbon also just adds a little something to these eggs. And I think they are super pretty. I'm really happy with the way they turned out. I didn't have enough of the same kind of ribbon for both of them, or at least I didn't think so until I found this extra roll. But I liked having them be complementary but different. So it actually worked out really well from my perspective. But let me know what you think when you see them here on display in just one moment. DIY number 4. All right, These are some old long johns of riches that he didn't want anymore and offered them up for me to craft with. And so I was like, sure. So they've been in my stash for some time. I'm cut off the little ankle, as you could see, and now I'm cutting just up the seam of the leg. I am after a square piece here. You could use a washcloth for this. You don't have to have necessarily fabric. You could use a little washcloth. You could use a napkin. I think this is technically a napkin fold. It's something that I found. Rebecca had shared some things on Pinterest with me, and I found this when I was flipping through some of what she had sent me. So thanks again to Rebecca for the inspiration. But once I got that cleaned up and I had an approximate square, I kind of folded it a little bit of an angle diagonally, and I'm pinching up the little corners and bringing them together. These are going to be making little ears. Okay, so if I had clear rubber bands, that's what I would be using right now. I don't have any clear rubber bands, so I'm making do with what I have. This is kind of like it's a clear, I don't want to call it a thread. It's kind of elasticy. I think it's usually meant for little bracelets, but I am using it to kind of find a way to get this tied up in a way that isn't visible. That's ultimately my goal. So I'm tying this off. I had originally done a slip knot and created that little loop and then pulled it tight around there. And now I'm just tying off the ends to try and make sure that the slip knot doesn't come undone. So now I'm rolling up the other end. So hopefully you can see that. So it was the bottom of the triangle, the long end of the triangle, I rolled up towards the ears, and then I wrapped it around to the back. And I'm tying this off, and this is going to make a little head. Okay, so we've got the ears and the head. And now, if I'm going too fast for you, highly recommend that you just pause it as I go, and you can always rewind and watch again. When I tell you, when I saw somebody doing this fold on Pinterest, I think I watched it, no joke, like 10 or 15 times until I got it straight in my head what they were doing. So there is no shame in pausing the video and, rewinding it and watching it again if you need to. But I'm basically just folding over these ends towards the outside, if that makes sense. And just, it doesn't have to be a lot. I would say I folded it over maybe, gosh, 1.5 inches. And then just tied that off on each one. So you got the two little legs, for lack of a better term, and then you fold them right back up underneath its head, so it creates the body and its little legs. Its little paws are sitting underneath his little chin, and I was just trimming off the little ends of the I want to call it string, but the stuff that I'm using to tie this with. So now before I tied that up underneath, I was going to go ahead and put a little bow around the bunny's neck. I totally should have flipped this around and done it upside down. I have better luck tying my bows upside down. I don't know why, but I was being stubborn and I was going to see if I could try and figure out how to get it right side up. And clearly I did not succeed here, but it was still a cute little bow. I just feel like it's upside down. So anyway, I can always fix it later. So now I'm ready to go ahead and tie his little legs up underneath. I probably could have done that first. I was afraid that I wasn't going to be able to get the bow around the neck the way I wanted it if I did this first, but in hindsight, I think it would have been all right. So I do recommend tying up the little paws before adding the bow to the neck. So just a little pointer there. But I think this little guy turned out super cute. Please take a look here and let me know what you think. And let me know which one of these is your favorite. Okay, everybody, that's it for today. If you enjoyed the projects, as always, remember to give me a big thumbs up, leave me a comment, let me know which one was your favorite. And until the next time, be well, be kind, and make it a great day. Thank you so much for watching. Take good care. Bye.